Hello, BookTube. Well, it's Friday, and on BookTube, that tends to mean the beginning of weekly reading wrap ups or accounts of some kind or other, Friday reads or Saturday reads, weekend reads, where we look over the books that we have read recently and the books that we are currently reading and the books that we hope to read soon and talk about them a bit. Uh, I really enjoy these videos. They're a real glimpse into the non-entertainment side of BookTube, into what it would be like to sit down and talk to you about your reading. Uh, this is the 10th attempt that I've made to make this video. It's early. I'm trying to get it done before the heat of the day settles in. Uh, and I've been in the odd position, a position that I'm almost never in, of trying to talk myself in to making a BookTube video. I have loved doing this. Since 2016, I have loved doing this. Loved talking with you all about books and reading. And I don't see any reason why we can't keep doing that for another month. I don't see any reason why that's impossible. So I thought we'd go through it. I thought I'd try to run down some of the books on a Friday reads. For those of you who are new to my channel, Friday reads can present a bit of a logistical problem for me because I read a lot. I read a lot more than most people do, even most readers, because I don't do anything else. So I'm paring down the numbers here. For instance, I don't think I have anything on my list that I have read or reviewed for the American trade journals. I do a lot of that, and I don't think I've included anything. In all fairness, I don't think there was anything that was worth including. But I think I've left those out. I've left out a lot of rereads. I've left out a few new reads in the area of specialist history or contemporary fiction. But I think I've covered a fairly good spectrum. We'll see. So the first one is by Grant Muller, and it's for the gays, because you got to have something for the gays. And it's From the Rooftops. And it's a contemporary gay love story about a college senior who has gradually, almost so gradually that he isn't really aware of how it happens. Let me get rid of the shadows this way, maybe. Fallen in love with his best friend, who isn't quite sure that he's gay. In fact, he's 50-50. And that's really awkward, right? Because the main character doesn't want to lose his friend. But he also doesn't want to walk away from a possibility of romance with his friend. I haven't read this yet. I only know two things about it. One is that the author is a bit of a super hottie, and that always adds an element to gay fiction. I'm not quite sure how I've quantified that element over the years, but I definitely noticed when it's true. I ought to pinpoint how I noticed that. I think that might be interesting to think about. And the other thing that I know about this ahead of time, of course, is that if you are ever in the position of choosing between friendship with your best friend or perhaps an erotic relationship with your best friend, run for the hills. You are going to make the wrong decision. But the book could be charming. We will see. Then we have straight romance, not only straight romance, but Regency romance, which I love. This is by Elizabeth Hoyt, who can do no wrong. This is No Ordinary Duchess, about a young lady. I haven't read this yet, but I've read the rest of the books in this series. And the young lady here, I believe, is the daughter of an earl or something like that. Usually that is the case. But it's the male character, the male lead in the story, that strikes me as of interest, because he is convinced that his uncle is a murderer. And there are high personal stakes and even criminal stakes right from the beginning. This author can really do no wrong, so I'm sure that I will love this book. I just kind of waiting on the mass market paperback. For some reason, I am imprinted when it comes to romance novels with reading mass market paperbacks. I shouldn't, because I've read more of them now in ebooks than mass market paperbacks, but nevertheless. Then we have something by Damien Searles, who will be familiar. That name may be familiar to you as a translator. He does lots of really good translations, including one just recently of Hermann Hesse. And this is a book of his about the process of translating. the philosophy of translation. I'm going to forgive him the word philosophy because I don't think this is going to be about that. I think this is going to be the nuts and bolts of how he views it. Not a philosophy, so not the translationness of translation, but rather just how do you do it? How do you go about it? I have always found when you read some new translation of a classic, or you read a bunch of old Oxford or Penguin translations of classics, in addition to the introduction to the book, there will almost always be a translator's preface. And I always find those fascinating. Just fascinating. And I'm hoping that this will just be one long translator's preface about how you go about it. And speaking of long, we'll go on to another one. This I haven't read yet. I'm hoping to get it in the mail. Although maybe I shouldn't, because it's 1,200 pages long, almost 1,300 pages long. And that'd be a brick to get in the mail. This is, of course, the new Brandon Sanderson. This is Wind and Truth, the concluding volume, as far as I know, of the Stormlight Archive. And I have followed this series. I've plowed my way through the other books. Can't really say that it has been unpleasant. These are monstrously overwritten. They are monstrously self-indulgent. But Sanderson is very enjoyable on the page. You end up, if you can get into the right mind frame, you end up not so much minding how self-indulgent he is, how unedited he is. Some authors are like that. Some authors can just go on and on and on, and I don't mind. Other authors go on and on and on, and I know perfectly well it's because they weren't edited, and it bothers me on every page. With him, it doesn't bother me all that much, so I thought, I am waiting for this, and I thought in the meantime I might reread just the last book, just the previous book in the Stormlight Archives. I don't want to go through the whole series. The whole series would be 4,000 pages or more. No, much more than that, right? 6,000 pages, probably. This next one is big. It's a big, beautiful thing. It's one of the only things I brought actually here to the couch to show you in person rather than just on the screen, because it begs to be a gift for somebody. So I thought I would show you its dimension, but I'll show you the book. This is Lunar, a big new book about Earth's moon. And this is the book. This thing right here. So it's oversized, and it is full of pictures. Historical stuff at the beginning, and then all that we can know about the moon now. All the mapping, all the geological features, everything that we know about the planets, the planetoids, all the moon's history, all that stuff, all in one beautiful oversized book with these engraved silver highlights on the cover. It's amazing. It comes gift wrapped or wrapped in cellophane, and I don't quite remember how much it costs. I don't think the cost is going to be on this thing. Wait, there's a price tag at the bottom. It's $65, so that's a chunk of change. But as a Christmas present to, the astronomy obsessed person on your list, you really can't go wrong. It's oversized, but it is endlessly packed with stuff. I had a blast going through it, and I know that I will go through it many, many times before. I've always been fascinated by Earth's moon, almost big enough to constitute a sister planet. I've always been fascinated by it. I think it's amazing that dinosaurs looked up at it, that prehistoric hominids looked up at it, that when there were 5 or 6 species of humans on Earth, they all looked up at the moon. I have 2 published short stories under my own name. They are separated by better than a decade, and they're both about the moon. So I find it fascinating as a subject, and if you know somebody who does, this is going to be so much better than even a really informed monograph with no illustrations. This is really a treasure. Then we have something that I have only read the introduction. I've only read the beginning of it. The author's introduction makes it seem like maybe I should be reading Stanley Wells' book on the same subject instead of his own. But I'll give him a chance to dig out of that hole. The author is Darren Freebury Jones, and the book is Shakespeare's Borrowed Feathers. This is a study, probably quite a bit of linguistic analysis, computerized linguistic analysis of the intensely collaborative world of Elizabethan theater, where it's not so much a question of, who, if we use a computer to break down which playwright uses certain words, it's not really a question of that as it is whole phrases or certain unusual words used in tandem always. That I hesitate to add to place too much importance on that sort of thing, especially since the atmosphere was so intensely collaborative, but it can be enlightening. It can definitely be food for thought. And this book is set up chapter by chapter, each chapter being about a contemporary of Shakespeare's. And most people only ever read about a couple of those contemporaries. So whole chapters on each one of them, it could be really good. I've had 4 Shakespeare books in the last 2 or 3 weeks from publishers of one kind or another. And that's fine by me. And this next one was a gift from J. Scott Phillips. This is edited by Isaac Asimov and Martin Greenberg, and this is The Golden Years of Science Fiction, Volume 1 and Volume 2 in one big book. I intended originally to just pick and choose with this thing, but I ended up just reading it all in the way that I've read so much science fiction in my life, just lazily paging through it, enjoying most of it, sprawled on a couch in the really suppressing midday summer heat. The only difference being that was in November in Boston, but that's the new normal. So I read through all of this, and the thing that I was hoping would happen did happen. Usually in an anthology, when I'm reading an anthology, I'm interested in seeing how the well-known things that I know knock up against the other well-known things that I know. I'm interested in that kind of choreography, but I'm also interested in finding new things. And I read a story in here called Into the Darkness by Ross Rocklin. I think that was a pen name. And I loved it. And it's unlike anything else in the anthology. This is Volume 1 and Volume 2 in one big omnibus. It's not unlike anything anywhere in the book. And I got to thinking and realized that I know that name because he wrote a short story called Time Wants a Skeleton that has been in a couple of anthologies that I've read. And that stuck out to me then. I don't know why I didn't remember the name. But even the well-known stuff that I knew from this volume, I love it. I thought it was a fantastic anthology. I've had the individual volumes when they came out in little crappy mass-market paperbacks, but something about having the big volume, I'm glad that Scotty sent it to me. Very, very glad. This also had a Jack Williamson story in it called Starbright that just reminded me how much I tend to like his work. It was not anything like this Ross Rocklin person. Nothing at all like it. There's barely anybody in the anthology that had prose like that. But Jack Williamson is always so much fun to read. He's always so enjoyable to read that I loved it. And then we have a comic book. The first issue of a comic book. This is the first issue of Absolute Superman, written by Jason Aaron with art by Rafa Sandoval. And Rafa Sandoval did the cover. I should point out here that the interior art is actually quite good. It's melodramatic and a little oddly washed out, the way so much coloring in modern comics, modern superhero comics is, but still really good. Unlike this cover, where this figure those arms are not proportionate. Is one in front of the other? Why are they different lengths when they're the same size? Why does this person have a thigh that is as wide as his body? Why is he pot-bellied when the character in the book is not? Another thing that is a slightly deceptive, two things that are slightly deceptive about this cover is that in the internal artwork for this book, there is no sunlight. Half the story takes place on Earth, but in apparently perpetual twilight. And also the character, very crucially, never wears the big signature red cape. But this is a retelling of Superman that half of it takes place on the planet Krypton, as Jor-El and Lara, the parents of Kal-El, Superman, slowly come to realize that Krypton is doomed. In this particular case, in this retelling, Krypton is doomed because of ecological mismanagement. And Krypton is an intensely stratified society with classes, so that you're not allowed to speak to your betters and whatnot. You're locked into your life depending on what class you're in. Uh, and the present takes place with a very young Kal-El. Uh, he's not a grown man. He seems like a late teenager. He doesn't have the spit curl, doesn't have the jaw. It seems more like a boy than anything else. And his costume appears to be sentient. He refers to it as Sol, S-O-L. And he needs to charge his solar radiation abilities in some sort of giant solar battery from time to time. He's not getting unlimited superpower from Earth's sun. Instead, he has to charge himself, and he is wanted by a multinational corporation. So there's Twitter politics on both ends of the story, the Krypton story and not. He's wanted by an international corporation. They want to capture him alive because he's been interfering with their mining projects. We start off in, I think it's Brazil, where we meet him. He is getting to know he's a group of miners who go down into the mines to mine coal or whatnot that will be refined into diamonds. And when they're not watching, he uses his superpowers to refine everything into diamonds already, so that when the workers go down there into their hazardous conditions, they're just trolley after trolley after trolley of diamonds. And we are told that this mysterious person did the same thing at two other mining locations of this evil international corporation, and they hate him for it and want to chase him down and hunt him with weapons. And if you stop for a minute, if you blink outside of blue-haired SJW politics, and you would ask yourself, okay, why on earth would they object to someone doing their work for them? Why on earth would they object to that? And of course, the answer is obvious. The answer is because this evil corporation wants the miners to suffer. They don't care about the end product. The end product literally doesn't matter because they're being provided with wheelbarrows of it, and they don't mind. They're not interested in it. They want the miners to suffer. And one of the henchmen, one of the laser rifle toting crew at the end of the book, tasked with bringing this mysterious person in, is Agent Lois Lane. So no Daily Bugle, no Daily Planet, no Ace Reporter, nothing like that. The first issue shows two little epilogues. One is the Kent family farm in Smallville, only it is decrepit, it's empty, it's been bought by this corporation, and no one's living there. And the other is a super sophisticated laboratory. We see a figure seated at a table in front of computer monitors, looking at this superpowered being as the film footage is showing him being hunted, and musing, isn't this interesting? And there's no doubt who that character is, because in his background there are bottled cities with little voices coming out of him saying, please kill us, please kill us. So it's going to be Brainiac. I thought the artwork was good, weirdly washed out. Maybe that's a reflection of the fact that there's no sunlight in this world. That fact is never explained. And I really enjoyed the segments set on Krypton. I hated the posturing, the political posturing, but I love the characterization of Jor-El and Lara, where when Jor-El sees firsthand, he goes down into a mine and sees firsthand that what he suspects is true, that Krypton is rotting from the inside and it doesn't have long to live. There's one real neat panel where he reaches out to a wall of rock and says, what are you trying to tell me? To the planet. He barely survives a mine disaster, and when Lara looks up from her table at their home, he is staggering through the fields towards her, still stunned by what he saw. And he is greeted by her and by their son Kal-El and by Kal-El's little white dog. So I'll be interested. I am definitely going to get the next issue of this. I was not put off by it really at all. The Superman story has been retold and retold a million times. As far as I'm concerned, the canonical version of that story is Action Comics number 500. And Action Comics number 500 exists. No one's going back and changing it. No one can change my memory of reading it. So as long as I've got a template like that, I am happy to read any kind of revision, provided it's not just tedious from beginning to end. And this wasn't. This wasn't at all. So I will very much be interested in reading the next issue of Absolute Superman. No idea what this all in means. I'm gathering that's a DC initiative of some kind or other. And then to stick with Superman. This I have not read yet in one sense. In another sense, I have. I read all the issues. This is one of those big omnibus things. I'm really tempted. I don't usually like them because they're so ungainly, but the more I think about the issues that are contained in this thing, the more I think I might like to have them, and I don't know that they exist digitally. This is the triangle era of Superman. So this will be a big $120 hardcover, the big omnibus things. It'll contain dozens and dozens and dozens of issues, probably from in the wake of in this triangle era, you had several ongoing Superman titles: The Adventures of Superman, Superman, Action Comics, and this will probably have dozens and dozens of issues of all of that. That cover is by the great Jerry Ordway, and I have to admit, Jerry Ordway would probably be a big reason why I would get this book. He is absolutely perfect for Superman as an artist, and this is his last body of great work before he was eased out of the comic book world. It was glorious. When these issues were coming out on the stand, it was glorious to have Jerry Ordway drawing Superman on a regular basis. This cover is iconic, but he did dozens of truly great Superman covers alone. He did a lot of covers, if I remember correctly, in the Triangle era. Triangle was up on the corner of the thing and had a number on it so that you could read. Like I said, there are multiple Superman titles in a month, and the Triangle contained the number so that you would know that you were reading them in the right order. There were a whole bunch of different artists, including Bob McLeod, who I can't stand. I think he's one of the most boring comic book artists of them all. Unbelievably, just by random chance, just by the spin of the roulette wheel, he was the artist for one of the landmark issues in all of Superman. The issue where Clark Kent reveals to Lois Lane that he is Superman. And it's the most boring thing you've ever seen in life. Incredibly boring for such an important thing. But I think if I were going to get this, it would mostly be for Jerry Ordway, who does great covers even for issues that he doesn't draw, and who draws a lot of what I think is in this volume. I don't know. Would I get it and then not look at it? I don't know. I look at it once. Would I look at it once and then not again? I don't know. I'll be pondering on it. Then this next one is by John Ma. I haven't read this yet, but I did read a great review of it, and I'm very curious. And it exists. It's, I think, Princeton University. There shouldn't be any trouble to get it. This is Polis, A New History of the Greek City-State. Big thing. I think this is like 700 pages long, and that's a fascinating subject for me. I'd be happy to. This is baby. You want to come down here? Go. There you go. Oh, what are you going to do? You just going to hang there in that pose? Or are you going to go over to your chair? You can do that. Okay. All right. Anyway, this is several hundred years of Greek history. I'd gladly take it. I will just see. It might be that it's expensive to produce. Maybe Princeton doesn't have a copy to send me. I'll ask them tomorrow. Then we have something that we've seen on this channel before. I couldn't resist, so I read it. It's by Catherine Fletcher, and it's called The Roads to Rome. This was terrific. Another piece of Roman history that was just terrific. This has been a good year for Roman history in the popular market. All about the expansion of the empire, not so much by means of military conquest or cultural contest or economic conquest. How do you get that expansion to happen? How do you connect your cities? How do you to provide them with fresh water and whatnot? This is, I wish that it were longer. I like this author. I went and found my review of her book on the divorce of King Henry VIII, and remembered that I really enjoyed that book. I don't have a copy. I don't have the copy the publisher sent me, but I did like it. But this is approaching an engineering history of Rome's conquest of the ancient world, and that is a fascinating approach. Then we have something by Peter Hunter Blair. This is 1970, 1970s trade paperback reprint of his book on the world of Bede, the Venerable Bede. It was an ancient author that I like very, very much. I really enjoy Bede's company. I enjoy his company on the page. And I really enjoyed this book. The only drawback that I saw, it wasn't much of one, I didn't even think of it as a drawback until I was done with it, is that this would be of no interest whatsoever to someone who did not know Bede. Not just know of him, but know his work. I don't think there's any way that the world of Bede makes it seem like a broader overview of medieval England, and that is not this. This is the world of Bede's writing. So I thought it was very, very good. I enjoyed it a lot, but I don't know that most people would unless they know this author. Then we have Alistair MacLean. There's a booktube event going on called Dr. November about spy and espionage thriller type fiction and nonfiction. And I was having trouble easing into it. And I saw Jim at Mystery and Mayhem did a video on Alistair MacLean, and I thought, there's a way to do it. So Alistair MacLean wrote a lot. He wrote a lot of books, and not all of them had anything to do with thrillers or espionage. But one of you also reminded me in a comment that he was always known for his kind of fervid, over-the-top prose style, his plotting style. So I decided to read his last book, Santorini. And it was terrific. It was dumb as all get out, but it was terrific. All about retrieving an active nuclear warhead from the bottom of the ocean, and the retrieval team wondering who they can trust and do they have enough time, and is a nearby volcano, the volcano of Santorini, going to erupt, and if it doesn't, is an atomic explosion at the bottom of the sea going to make it erupt, and maybe make other volcanoes erupt, because monkey see, monkey erupt or whatnot. The more it went on, the less sense it made, and the more fun I was having. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I bet books like that. I don't know that there was much in the way of espionage or thriller involved. I guess it was a thriller to retrieve the thing. But boy, was it fun. And it plus the other Alistair MacLean book that I read, which I think we're getting to on this list, is a perfect reintroduction to this author. Just perfect. I am now hugely favorably disposed when I find a book of his, so I will probably keep rereading them during Dr. November and long after until I've reread them all. And this next book is by Robert Garland. I don't know when this comes out. This may be a book from next year. It's called What to Expect When You're Dead. And it's a guide to the ancient world of the afterlife. Not just the Egyptians, but any concept of the afterlife in the ancient world. What were the funerary practices? What were the religious rites? There's an Egyptian sarcophagus on the cover because, of course, the Egyptian society was massively preoccupied with what happens after you die. Fetishistically obsessed with the afterlife. But lots of other as the author makes clear, all other human societies have been involved in that in one way or another. They've all wanted to know, and even pre-human societies. So the book starts off with that kind of an overview of pre-human societies, and this has always been a preoccupation of humans ever since they realized, or proto-humans realized, that when someone dies, they don't stick around. They're not there anymore. So what happened to them? You're remembering them. You're remembering what they were like, but they're not around anymore. So surely they went somewhere, even though you can see that they didn't. I really enjoyed this. I found it fascinating. I wish that I had a print copy, but for a dumb reason, because I read it as an electronic galley, and the electronic galley that I read was a PDF. I don't know about the rest of you. I know that PDFs are valuable in their technological way. They can't be mucked with or whatnot. They're locked down. But boy, are they awful to read. They're just awful to read on an e-reader. I've never had I've had Kobos and Kindles and Barnes and Noble and whatnot and Onyx Books Note. I've never found an electronic device that can read a PDF in any civilized way. I know that I could probably convert the thing to an EPUB and maybe erase some of those problems, but I've often found those conversions don't work with PDFs. That they just don't seem to want to work well with any kind of electronic device. But that's a very first world problem, I know. I still enjoyed the book, very much so. I was also a little bit relieved in the 21st century that the author mainly spends his time writing about what these ancient societies and peoples thought about the afterlife, rather than writing about the afterlife. If you understand, if I'm making that distinction clear enough, there's no way to write about the afterlife because the afterlife doesn't exist. Its very attractiveness as an fantasy for mortal beings is sign number one that it is a fantasy. Your brain is powered by oxygenated blood. When your heart pumping that blood stops doing that, your brain starts to die. You don't go anywhere. You don't go anywhere any more than when you're washing dishes and a soap bubble forms in the sunlight and the light from the window is prisming through it and it's really pretty and then it bursts. You don't for a minute think that soap bubble it went anywhere. You don't think it still exists somewhere. It existed. The conditions were exactly right for it to exist. It shined for a bit and then it disappeared. That's you and every toad and every amoeba and every blue whale. That's everything that lives. You live, their chemicals assemble, they shine for a bit, and then they disassemble. They don't go anywhere. Nothing, no part of you goes anywhere. No part of you is living inside your body like some sort of deadbeat tenant. You are your body. You are your biology. When your biology breaks down, that's it. But humans have never made peace with that. They've never been peaceful with that idea. They hate it. And this is an archaeology of the ways they show that. I thought it was really good. I'll have to check to see when it comes out. Then we have something by Sean Patrick Little. This is, I think, was served up to me by one of those ebook deal of the day type websites. I sign up for a few of those, and I get a lot of interesting reading that way. This is called After Everyone Died. It's I guess a post-apocalyptic novel. Our main character is for a long part of the book, he is, as far as he knows, the only survivor of something that is just colloquially referred to as the flu. A massive pandemic that sweeps through the world and kills everyone, except him and a dog from the neighborhood. This young guy and his dog basically have the world to themselves in suburban Wisconsin. And he's lonely and he's grief-stricken. He's not nearly as grief-stricken as I think he should be. Maybe he's in shock, but if he's in shock, he stays there for a bloody well long time. The dog shows more grief than he does for all the people that they've lost in common. But he realizes that he has to get ready for a Wisconsin winter. So he finds a car that works. He finds Costco that is piled high with materials that he might need, bedding and food. He puts a lot of emphasis on firearms, of course, just in case he's not alone and in case there are marauding animals, and also on dental supplies, which is a first for me with post-apocalyptic books. Post-apocalyptic books are really popular with those ebook a day sites. I guess people love to write them. But this is the first one where the character spends a good amount of time safeguarding his teeth. He raids several dental offices for toothpaste and fluoride and flossing, even some mirrors. He raids a pharmacy for a whole bunch of different kinds of drugs, just in case he needs them. And for a long time, it's competently done. It's not amazing writing at all, but you won't stop reading. It's not dumb writing. For a long time, that's the drama. This kid by himself with his dog. The dog is more interesting as a character than he is. That was a big gamble on the author's part. Maybe he was making a point by making his only character, his only human character, so non-existent. So I don't see what that gamble would be, and it didn't really work. I would have much preferred that the main character, the main human character, be interesting. But for a long time in the book, the drama that will keep you turning the pages is just him exploring and then preparing to survive in this newly empty world. Of course, you can guess what the drama of the second half of the book is, which is that he's not actually alone. Uh, but I liked it. I don't know if it's the first in a series or not. I would definitely read another book in the series. Then we have something that I got a while ago. I got the mass market paperback, but I don't have any of the physical books of any of these things here. I'm just going to show you, aside from Lunar, because this is just so beautiful. This is just such a beautiful thing. This is Flying Forts, about the B-17 in World War II, by Martin Caidin, the author of Cyborg, that was the basis for the $6 Million Man. Cyborg, I think, is the way that anybody is going to know this author. And this is not that. This is nonfiction about one extremely heavy heavy-duty military aircraft during World War II. And it is fantastic. This was just fantastic. It was narratively 10 times stronger than Martin Caidin's fiction. I've read all the Cyborg books. It's like a different person wrote them. This is, although I don't think that a different person did, because the narrative footprint is the same. It's just, this is so much better. It's such strong credence to my theory that so many people that we know as fiction writers we would know as nonfiction writers if you could make a living that way. Because so many times they show that is where their real talents lie. This is amazingly good. It's narrative history. Naturally, there's a huge amount of narrative history of the air warfare of World War II, but also full of personal stories. The men who flew the B-17s are really the stars of this book. And I can only imagine how much work Martin Caidin had to put in to track all of them down and talk to them, cross-index their stories, remember them, and get their personality traits right. His interview subjects don't even sound the same. He imports a lot of the skills of writing fiction to crafting those interviews in this nonfiction book. I thought it was fantastic. Just loved it. What else we got here? Oh, right, a Western. This is not the version of this that I have. This is the hardcover, but I thought the hardcover illustration was quite lovely. A lot better than the mass market paperback that I got for like 25 cents or whatnot. This is The Last of the Plainsmen by Zane Grey. I would like to find this hardcover, although if I did, it would only be to look at it. I wouldn't buy it. Because this is a grotesque book. I mean, Zane Grey is one of the founders of the Western genre. And most of what I've read by him I like. And on one level, I like this. It's the story, as all of his novels are, it's the story of one man, one good, capable man who is living at the tail end of the Wild West era. He can see the modern world right around the corner. And not only through mechanization, but also through the other stereotypical way that you can see the modern world coming in Western novels, which is the extermination of the American buffalo. And with it, most of the Native American peoples that rely on the buffalo herds. And this is not a long thing. It'll take you half an hour to read. And I was reading the beginning of it, and I was thinking, well, that's really evocatively done. Of course, it's bloody and gory. It's sad as all get out. People are just monomaniacally killing these giant herbivores in a swath of blood. And I was thinking, well, I don't know. I've never read The Last of the Plainsmen before. I thought, I don't know where you're going with this. The main character in the book doesn't like the slaughter. It's not just that he doesn't like the men he's with. He doesn't like the brutality of it. But he doesn't do anything to stop it, and he doesn't leave the job. And I thought, okay, well, he hasn't done anything yet, but maybe he's coming to a crisis of conscience, and maybe he will. But no, instead, he just follows. He goes around the world. A huge chunk of this book is not set in the American West. It's set in the Arctic, where he proceeds to help another group of men that he doesn't like slaughter musk oxen. And those scenes go on for page after page after page, where these animals are just brutally slaughtered, one whole herd after another, with the main character objecting the whole time, but not doing anything about it. It was hard for me to really care about the interpersonal drama that Zane Grey always works into his novels. It was hard for me to really care about that. When I'm watching this main character just watch these slaughters and know that they're slaughters and not do anything about it. It'd be different if he was a figure of his time and thought maybe that buffaloes and musk oxen were infinite in their supply. It wouldn't be much different, but it would be a little different, but it wasn't that. It's just, maybe the whole thing is Zane Grey's meta commentary on the bloodlust that ended an era, that exterminated the passenger pigeon and the American buffalo, and almost exterminated musk oxen, almost exterminated beavers, exterminated wolves in the lower 48. Maybe it's his meta commentary on that, but to me, it seemed just to be reveling in that. So I'll let this be a lesson to me not to read Westerns outside of June on the Range. Then we have a Charlie Kingsley mystery by Michelle Pariza Wachik. I'm sure that I got from one of those ebook of the day type things. I'm sure I did. Great title, Loch Ness Murder instead of Loch Ness Monster. Oddly enough, Loch Ness, the famous location of the Loch Ness Monster, is only a secondary location in this book. There's another lake in Scotland that also has an indigenous monster, not called Nessie, but called Lakey. And when the book opens, our main character and all the quirky locals, I'm gathering this is not the first book in the series. I didn't really check. It's a cozy murder mystery series, and I'm trying to make myself like cozy murders more than I do. They also, like post-apocalyptic novels, they proliferate in the self-published ebook market that is catered to by those daily ebook deal websites. At least 5 or 6 cozy murder mysteries are offered to me every day for prices ranging from $2.99 to nothing. And that's no range at all because we don't buy any ebooks, right? We pay nothing for them. So I just get the free ones. But two scientists who are, I guess, this author's playful idea of what all scientists are like. They're weird. They're virtually inhuman. They're uber nerdy. They're, the Big Bang Theory. They show up and immediately start arguing with the locals and being prissy and pedantic about wanting to study whatever this creature is, and they have a whole bunch of hypotheses. And one of them ends up dead. They're virtually interchangeable, the two of them. And you certainly aren't supposed to care that one of them is dead. You're just supposed to care about whether or not the wacky locals can figure out who done it. My ongoing quest to find a cozy murder mystery series that really appeals to me goes on, because this certainly didn't do it. It's flatly written, like so many of them are, and none of the characters are real. They're all bit players from Murder, She Wrote. And the murder's dumb, the explanation is dumb, and the scientists, the living one and the dead one, they're such ridiculous caricatures that I didn't end up caring at all. I would love to have come up with the title Loch Ness Murder, but that's it. Now, this next one, I don't really know if this counts as a cozy murder mystery. This is by Clara Benson, and it's called The Murder at Sissingham Hall. It is an Angela Marchmont mystery set in between the wars in England. A lot of stereotypical setting to it. The main character, the narrator, his family went bust, and he shipped out to Africa and discovered a gold mine, so he's well set off. And he knows the aristocratic family at the heart of this novel, the Buckleys. So when he comes back home, finally, much seared by the African sun and a stranger in his own land and whatnot, he hooks up with them again, goes to their palatial home, gets to know them, and through the social rounds that are a part of a big country house, he meets Angela Marchmont, who's a little older than she looks and enigmatic from the start, and is definitely the sleuth of the whole series, certainly the sleuth of this book. As the vultures start to circle our main character Charles, he since he owns a gold mine, all sorts of people start circling him, all sorts of bluff old Colonel Blimp figures, but also sharkier financier figures. And someone ends up dead, and then halfway through the book, another person ends up dead. And I'm sure that I got this from one of those email sites as well. I enjoyed this. My goal when I get these things, this doesn't do anything wrong at all. It's not flat. None of the characters are weird like uh, in the flu pandemic book. All the characters, they're all extremely telegraphed. This is um, basically it's murder at Brideshead. So if you know that kind of stereotype, whether it's Anthony Pohl or Evelyn Waugh or whatever, if you know that kind of stereotype, you're largely going to know what you're getting in this book, and also, unfortunately, you're going to know who done it. But I still enjoyed it. I still thought it was really well done. My goal with these things is twofold. One is to see, will I keep turning the pages? Are you actually doing the bare minimum as an author? Are you keeping me reading? And if you are, well, then I will keep reading, because self-publishing books is an uphill game. It's a tough job. So if you've done enough, then I will keep reading. And the other reason I go at these things is because every once in a blue moon, I find one that's great. I find one that's fantastic, where it's not, will you keep me reading like a beach ball up in the air, but I'm going to stop everything and finish this and find out if the author's written anything else. I'm willing to hunt for that feeling. I think we all are. So this is book one of Angela Marchmont. I didn't check to see if there were others, but I would definitely read another one. Okay, then this next one is by Graham Stewart. I hauled this a while ago in the trade paperback there on the Foot Locker. This is Bang, History of Britain in the 1980s. I dipped into this and liked what I read. I finally buckled down and read the whole thing. And I liked it. It's very detailed, and it is not very contextualized. So if you were not following British news in the 1980s, I'm not sure how much you would get out of this book. I'm sure that you would get a lot out of it. I'm not sure how long you'd keep reading. The author has a really good, not at all Fleet Street style of narrative history. It's very meaty, it's very detailed, but it isn't very strong on contextualization. So if you don't know what Graham Stewart is talking about in chapter 13, you're probably not going to know what he's talking about in chapter 13, if you know what I mean. Some of the bigger stuff, Margaret Thatcher in broad strokes, the Falkland Islands, some of that stuff, you probably won't need much in the way of contextualization. I enjoyed it, but I don't think it's a keeper for me. I don't think I'll be holding on to it. And then we have the last book, which I've already talked about on this channel, but we go back to Alistair MacLean, to the novel of his that I started with to really bring me in. I thought I would include it in a Friday Reads. South by Java Head, which is not espionage or thriller at all. It's just a World War II historical novel. It's really good. It was written 3 decades before Santorini, and all the tricks and the gimmicks and the turbocharging and the piling on of the plot and whatnot, it's barely here at all. It's obvious that MacLean learned to do that book by book, maybe through excessive exposure to Hollywood. This is much more of a straightforward horrors of war, World War II in the Pacific historical novel. And I really enjoyed it. I really, really did. So, and that's a good thing, because that means that this reread of Alistair MacLean has now pleased me in 2 different authorial registers. Very different. And I know that he has at least one other. So that's great. I'm looking forward to really getting to know this author better over the course of this month. So there you go. That is a Friday Reads before the sun comes up. Full of different genres and this big gift book thing. It is $65, but well worth it, because it is just lovely. Topography, every crater, every flat lava bed, everything in here is explained. It's named, it's exactly located, longitude and latitude, just wonderful. Just the definitive book on Earth's moon. So that is a Friday Reads. I think this will work. I don't think there's anything wrong with this video. So it can be posted. And of course, when it comes to Friday reads or weekend reads or anything like that, I want to know what you're reading, what you're working on, what you've just finished, especially those of you who don't have booktube channels. I try to keep up with everybody who does videos like this, although even if you do, I'd still like to hear. Have you had any standout experiences recently, in November, let's say? Have you had any standout experiences in the reading world? How's your reading going? Uh, but anyway, that is a Friday Reads for today. So I'll wrap this up, and I will see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.